Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning. Welcome to the X Fan Show, the A Train Arlington Lane. Yeah, we all getting over this XFL championship thing. We're having a little bit of a hangover here. Yeah. But welcome to the show. A Train here at your service. Dirty is out this week. Yeah, he's still recovering from everything that has transpired over the last few days. Um, XFL championship is in the books. All 43 games are done, man. And you know what? We made it through a whole season. We made it. And it's hard to believe that that 43 games, man, it came pretty quick. What's going on, Marco? Good to see you, man. Thank you for tuning in today as we kind of start wrapping up the end of this season. And got a lot of NFL contracts going for most of these guys. So, I'm happy to see that. I'm grateful that they're getting an opportunity to extend their careers and play a little bit. I know y'all know how much I've talked about it on the show each week, how I believe the XFL should develop its own stars. I still believe that. But when you start seeing most of these guys getting themselves, prepped for the next level, wanting to play in the NFL, you can't help but applaud them. You know what I mean? So, yeah, what's going on, Andy? Hey, it was great. When I tell you, folks, it was great to meet everyone, a lot of people over at the XFL Championship. It was literally one big family reunion. So, a lot of people around the XFL, I got a chance to meet many of the fans. Jared was there. Of course, Battlehawk was there. Marco was there. Jimmy was there cheering on his Arlington Renegades. Um, of course, Daddy Ed and Amanda. Yes, it was. I was glad to finally meet you, and it was awesome. Jorge was there. Leo, Phil, Reed was there. So of course, the mayor was getting his in. Uh, what's going on, champ? Good hearing from you as well, man. I'm feeling better, but this kind of it's still kind of a hangover, driving to San Antonio. I feel for my man Ballhawk who drove over 20 hours to get from one area in the north all the way down to the south. But a lot of if I missed you, please do not hang it over my head. Just it was a lot of people there, and those that I knew, that I got a chance to speak with, and then those that I did not know. Uh, just I'm grateful that I got a chance to meet you all. Um, Of course, Dirty had the party going, and that's kind of what everything was about. And the experience was fantastic. That's right. Marcus like, I got no voice, but we still champions, man. Yeah, everybody, a lot of people, fans bases were down there. Houston was down there. I know my guy from the Rough 'em Up podcast, Cullen Watkins, he was also there in attendance at the game too. Um, we saw a fantastic game itself. Arlington overcoming all the odds. And I had a feeling, folks, that it was straight bulletin board material. When folks were saying that the 4-16 did not deserve to be in the championship or didn't even deserve to be in the playoffs, at that, they showcased that they deserve to be there. They showcased what the champion is supposed to be about. And so they finished their overall record at 6-6, got the championship. Um, but a lot of people, I was talking with some people at the game myself, and hey, Sandy, good seeing you. Welcome aboard. When I was there at the game, uh, of course, Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier was there in attendance. If you haven't gone to the page yet, you can see the picture that I take that took with Spurrier. Yeah, he was there and enjoying the game. I think his son's a coach for Arlington Renegades because him and his wife, they were decked out in Renegades gear. And I know the area where I was sitting, I was like, it was it was like kind of crammed and whatnot. And I know me and my lady, shout out to my lady, today is her birthday. Happy birthday to you, Renee. I want to make sure I threw that out there because I didn't want to forget because I already know I'm gonna get a phone call as soon as this show is over. He didn't say anything about my birthday. I got you. I got you covered. Don't worry about it. But what's going on, Antonio? He said he heard that is bad for the league all day. Listen, it's too bad. It happened, and here we are. Arlington Renegades are the champions, and that's all there is to it. Uh, oh, that's the hyena getting hers in. And what a wonderful time to be in attendance at the XFL championship. I was shocked. I was expecting, yeah, and we're gonna get that will happen. We'll get more into that on tomorrow's show, B Hawk Live. Dirty will be back on Thursday, and we'll wrap up the X Fan show for the season. We'll give you updates on what we're gonna do from future shows as we go throughout the rest of the year. Okay, so but yeah, the experience itself was fantastic. 22,000. I was shocked with the attendance number myself. I was expecting a little bit less, like 15,000. That exceeded my expectations. Then the ratings that finally came in today, that surprised me. It got 1.4, and I'm gonna bring in one of my guests in just a minute. 1.4 million, and it peaked at 1.8 million viewers. So I was ecstatic to see that it got nearly 2 million viewers for the game at some point. And it just showcased that now whole season is done. It probably had the best rating. Yes, I expected 15,000, and they exceeded that. So yeah, that was fantastic. I'm bringing in one of my guests from Player 54 podcast and Standing Guard. No, excuse me, not that one, but Player 54 podcast in Orlando. And grateful to have him come on. And I got a chance to meet him for the first time at the championship. It's my guy Mike Lathrop. Good afternoon to you, sir. How you doing, man?
I am well. How are you doing?
Man, I'm still recovering from everything that happened over in Orlando, man. I mean, excuse me, in San Antonio, because I'm still trying to figure out where the heck I was at.
What
so,
happened?
So I got to ask you, Mike, what was your experiences like when you were at the game in San Antonio?
I thought it was pretty cool. Obviously, I've been to some XFL games for a while now, back in 2020 at MetLife as a Guardian season ticket holder, and then Orlando as a Guardian season ticket holder again. But this is pretty cool. Seeing fans from all 8 teams and supporting the league, and felt that it was necessary to be there. And whether it was in the concourse area, whether it was in the seats, everyone was excited. Everyone was loving it. The energy, despite 22,000 and change being in attendance, just seemed real for not being a home game for anybody. Yeah, there was a lot of DC fans. Yeah, there was a lot of Arlington fans. But it was just encouraging that the reality is it was just the mixture that made it the right environment. And so it wasn't a pro DC, it wasn't a pro Arlington crowd. It was just a pro XFL crowd that was enjoying the game. And that was just a very cool Super Bowl-esque environment, because we see so many people, their dream is just to attend a Super Bowl, even if their team is in it or not. And in this case, people treated it that way. And, we can talk about the lead up in the tailgating and everything outside. It was a great environment all the way through. So, I was glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I'm seeing some of the fans, Mark, I'm seeing here, fans of fans coming together. Yeah, that was one big thing. And shout out to Orlando's Texas Barbecue. I want to put them out there. They provided with the brisket. I know I missed out on the taco portion, which is okay. That was fine. I wanted to have the brisket, and the brisket was fantastic. And I know because there was Jorge and the mayor, they would come to me and say, hey, have you tried the brisket yet? You need to go and try the brisket. Make sure you go and try the brisket. And so I did that, and they had a wonderful atmosphere. San Antonio did fantastic when it came to the being hospitable. That was glorious. I loved it. And you couldn't have had a better setting, because a lot of people were wondering, was it going to rain in the area? And I kid you not, Mike, as I'm getting into San Antonio, we're leaving Houston, going through Katy, it's pouring down raining. So I'm like, it was a little scary leaving the area and hoping that when we got to San Antonio, the weather would be fine. And it held off. I heard the rain held off during that period, and I'm glad that it did, because it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful night to enjoy one last XFL game for the season.
Yeah, I felt 2 raindrops from my time when I arrived Saturday morning down to the Riverwalk at about 11. So it was later in the morning. But the entire time when I was walking the Riverwalk, when I went over to the Alamo, obviously you got to hit up the Alamo if you're in San Antonio. So, visit the Alamo, and only 2 raindrops, which were back to back, but it was like almost like a phantom raindrops. Did it really happen? I know I felt them, but it's one of those things, like, it really did hold off. It was perfect. Not super sunny, but yet it got sunny enough during the day to enjoy the city and everything. And I think it was perfect for XFL fans to have that opportunity, not, get poured on for it, because you come in for the weekend and you want to live it up. And we kind of did. It was kind of good to see all the fans walking around downtown. And then obviously mingling at the tailgate was just the cherry on top, but actually it was the game that was the cherry on top. So, it just felt like a great thing. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to take in any of the festivities after the game, because I had my flight first thing in the morning to head back to Orlando. But I was trying to be a responsible individual, so I didn't go up. But I would have loved to see what the city would have been like after the game as well. So, I'm sorry I can't share those experiences. Maybe somebody else can enlighten me as to what I missed.
From what I was able to see, I wanted to go down, see what was on the field. That was like, but I will say for myself, I got a chance to see that a bit. Hey, what's going on, Jersey the King? Welcome to the show. And he said he got a chance to cover the season. Hey, and always welcome on board. Hey, make sure you share this out to your friends and have them come on board and join us with the X-Fan Show and the X-Fan Legion. And I see Amanda here say it was so nice to have met you, Mike. I think she got a chance to meet you too.
We did, down on the Riverwalk and at the tailgate as well. So it was a pleasure, Amanda.
So also, I want to give a personal shout out to everyone on Friday. Um, Friday that did at the Alamo Beer Company. They did the big super show, and middle finger to the trains that kept going by, and it was wrecking the video. But I heard it was actually a great time. Horns Forward and the Smoking Guns podcast came together, and of course, other podcasts came through to welcome in the big super show, and that's what this thing is about, man. And I'm grateful for that event happening then, and was able to go without a hitch. So I'm that's what this whole X-Fan community is about. That's what the Legion is about, is wanting to get this thing to grow. And hopefully in the future, I would love to see San Antonio do this again next season. I know a lot of people were feeling St. Louis should do it because of the dome aspect too. Kind of go back and forth between venues, have a in this case, a south venue and then a north venue being the representative to do games for the championship. So that would be pretty dope. So what have you seen so far, Michael? I know we saw the game. In the game, of course, Luis Perez, offensive star, they came out on fire once again, getting DC on their heels. What did you see during the game?
Well, yeah, DC. I was going to say DC didn't live up to expectations. I mean, that might seem a little bold to say because I did score still 26 points, but it was Arlington out of the gate, and yeah, there was a moment that, let's say, Perez had a little bit of luck on his side there for that one completion. He looked like he was going down, and he did kind of just toss it up there. It did not look natural in any way, and it was all wobbly, but it was completed, and that kept that drive alive. Because had that been intercepted at that point, we may have seen a momentum shift, a change that could have went in DC's in their favor. So, but sometimes luck is in the favor of whoever, and in this case, it happened to be Luis and the Renegades. And when they got ahead, they did not look back. I don't think DC was ready to ever be in the shadow completely. I mean, they've always been the front runner, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
So I think that kind of messed with them a little bit. Yeah. And I'm not saying that professionals can't overcome things, but for whatever reason, they looked like they were starting to get back into it, but they didn't quite get there. They didn't. Right. It was Arlington that was the team from the get-go that was a better team. And I hate this narrative, right? And I heard it a little bit in the stands, but people weren't, pushing it too much about that. A 4-6 team, 4-6 team. I'm like, well, first of all, they're 5-6, folks. They weren't 4-6 anymore. They were 5-6 coming into the game. And I'm like, this narrative that a losing team was going to win or potentially win, because everyone's like, well, this is Arlington. They've already won it. Everyone was talking about it, and like, this game's over. And then we were at halftime. Like, this game's already over. But it doesn't matter if they were losing record coming in. They finished it as a 500 team, people. So this narrative of a losing team winning the championship, that's not the reality. They're a 500 ball club. If you're going to be real, let's be honest. They finished the season at 500. It doesn't matter what they were. We've had 7 and 9 teams and 8 and 9 teams or whatever now. It's going to be the norm in the National Football League. So let's not kind of pile it on the XFL too much for that. So that trade for Luis Perez, this was a different team because of that trade. And the XFL not having that trade deadline tells you moving forward in season 24 and season 25, right? Whatever we get there, don't count anybody out, because one team making the right trade for the right player. Here are my contributor, Mark Hallback, used to say all the time, well, that offensive line is essentially their problem, and the OC, right? Well, the offensive line was the same offensive line. They just swapped out a quarterback, and it's interesting to think how one personality, one mindset shifted everything. Because I've even saw Sal Canella's interview, because I didn't get to watch the broadcast, but I saw something circulate on social media where Sal said, Luis came in and changed the entire environment. Everybody believed in themselves in a way they didn't. One man changed it, and now it's a winning team. They weren't losers anymore. They didn't think of it. They knew they could achieve anything, and they did. They didn't just think it. They went and did it. And against the team that people thought it was a fluke that they lost to the Guardians.
There's a point that Jersey the King just posted up, and he said the downfall of the DC defenders was Greg Williams' defensive scheme, cover O, and constantly rushing and getting caught. It was getting caught on to eventually. And Bob Stoops and his coaching staff pretty much outcoached Barlow and Williams. Yeah, I mean, he was prepared and ready for them, because you got to remember the last matchup that those two came about. They only lost by Arlington only lost by 2 points.
Right.
And that was Luis Perez's first game with the Arlington Renegades. And so for that, and then I think it was also Kelly Bryant's first game too with them. So for that to be as close as it was, you already know that was bulletin board material for Arlington getting prepared for this XFL championship, knowing that they were not going to be in the same realm again. And they came out firing, and they came out keeping the defenders on their heels to the point where they wind up getting the championship. I know we could speak about all day, Mike, that Perez, had he started at the beginning of the season, it could have been a whole totally different outcome for the Renegades. We don't know that. But what we do know is that the Renegades got the job done when they needed it to. And they can thank, believe it or not, the runner-up, the DC Defenders. And I can say that because remember the DC game against San Antonio. John Parker Romo, he hits the first field goal, called timeout. And I swear I could see that he looked very confident that he was going to hit that field goal again. And then the second try, he missed. And that was the game. So, and because if they win, the Brahmas are looking at a playoff berth over the Arlington Renegades. Like, that moment there really determined how this season was going to go. And the narrative that everybody kept pushing about the 4-16 making the playoffs and stuff, I swear, without question, Bob Stoops used that as bulletin board material.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Why wouldn't he? And why wouldn't that coaching staff just push that and push that and push that? Because you know what? After a while, I was tired of hearing it, and I wasn't in that locker room. I wasn't the one that was in, training camp and played the entire season being like, what are you talking about? We don't deserve this, man. I've been here since day one. We finally found our quarterback. It wasn't the rest of us. We just didn't have the right quarterback. And I'm not taking a shot at Slaughter or, Plitt. It is what it is. Some people are the right fit. Things mesh a certain way. They don't. That's why they call it a system, right? People refer to systematic quarterbacks or whatever. Okay, I'm not trying to bag on anybody in particular, but some people fit a certain style of play and the right schemes and stuff. So Luis was their guy. They were just missing him all year. They didn't take long for him to get into the swing of it, right? They didn't have half a season to figure it out. What did he get there? Week 7, 8, whatever it was. I mean, come on, people. I want to touch base on Kelly Bryant for a little bit.
Yeah.
If we can kind of roll back, because we're talking about quarterback. So when I saw him come in, I was like, man, please, Luis has been your guy, right? And I'm like, you're here. Let's not ruin this. So I wasn't sure how much he was going to get, those reps under center. But looking at how they did it, right? They obviously did not take Luis out of it. They let Luis be the guy, but it was the right amount, because I think that kind of caught Williams and company a little bit like, we didn't necessarily see this coming. And yeah, they ran it. I wish I would have seen Bryant throw it a little bit, because that could have really, really put them on their heels a tad bit, because they didn't quite do the dual threat with him. And I think that could have been something, but they didn't need to. Obviously they won it. They were in control of the game, but that was an interesting move that I did not see coming. And I don't think DC did as well.
As we get into the new season next year and stuff, many of these guys will return, and, opportunities hopefully will remain for guys that sign NFL contracts and they continue on with their respective teams and stuff. But if not, they come back to the league, do it all over again. And I want to see now, and plus there's going to be more talent coming in, because there's going to be more players being evaluated and getting ready to participate in these, because there are going to be more showcases and there are going to be more combines and things that the XFL is going to be putting together and getting them ready for the next season. I get this. I get it. Attendance being disappointing, being right at 22,000. Honestly, I was expecting less. I was expecting way less than that. And, they didn't do that. But for what it's worth, you would have expected at least 30,000, and you were trying to get to 30,000 for a title game. You got to understand how the media and how fans that are not of the XFL depict the XFL. They depict it as lower tier, and you think they're going to be higher than that, and they're not. It's all good. It's really all good. Like, seriously, what we saw is expected. This was fine. And even going into the future next season, there's going to be, I think it could just go nowhere but higher at this point. What you thinking, Mike?
Yeah, I think 22 is decent. I'm not going to try to say it's great. I'm not trying to say it was terrible, because I think it was decent. I don't know what I would have anticipated. I knew we weren't getting 30,000. I knew that wasn't going to happen. I mean, what did we expect? Do we expect all of the Brahma fans to show up no matter what, and then whoever was going to travel in for it? Because San Antonio, if we look at their average across, for the entire season, they started out really hot in the opening game, but they dwindled like a lot of other teams did. So, what were we expecting? To think you're going to get 30.
You're not going to go out to see them. All right, and that's just the reality of how things are when it comes to crowds. If your team is not performing well, because granted, the Orlando Guardians, a lot of people already, because they were losing, but they were very competitive in a lot of their games. And I think that's where the drawback was. The record does not, in my opinion, the record does not fit how that team really was. And so because of that, they had a lot of bad luck and had bad losses. And there was the ones that were very competitive. I was like, well, hey, this team got a chance where next season they could do better with those crowds. However, now you tell me this, Mike, it's a difficult thing for Orlando because of the weather.
Yeah.
Being in a warmer climate, if your weather was probably 70, 75, maybe 80, maybe 83 at the highest, that's great. You could manage that being in a game for 2.5, maybe 3 hours. But anything beyond that is difficult.
I think weather plays a factor. I don't know if it's the lone reason. I think kind of how they decided to set up the stadium, because they don't put anybody on the shaded side of the stadium for whatever reason in Florida. That blows my mind, as well as a lot of fans that I've spoken to in Orlando. It just doesn't make any sense. You're asking them to sit in the beaten sun, even though this is not our hottest time of the year, but there was days it was still high 80s, low 90s when I've been at Orlando games. That takes a toll on you when it's a turf field. The turf just holds in that heat, so it's just kind of baking, and that's kind of difficult. But if you're going to not use one side of the field, can we use the shaded side? I understand it's set up for television the way it is, but there's got to be a way to work and flip that. You look at Cash. They could have configured it any way they did because of their the patio is why they ultimately went the way they did in that one corner. But you got to be able to have some leeway. It's where you set up the cameras. You can set somebody in a suite and do broadcasting out of a suite versus wherever the media is really supposed to set up. I'm like, you have the entire stadium to you. It's not like you've sold out all these suites and You have a ton of people in the press box. I mean, you could shift people into suites if you wanted to. I mean, there's a way of doing it that would be actually beneficial for the fans. And I think part of it's not how bad the team was. I think it was how hot it was. And people were talking about it after a couple games. And you know what? They're like, it's only going to get warmer. You start in February, and it's only getting warmer as you get further into the season. So I think that's a big, big part of it. And obviously, they got to take the training wheels off. What I mean is, like, this league just got started. I think we'll see more promotion, and we'll see it in some of the markets that obviously were the new teams, which didn't have the benefit of already having an existing fan base from 2020. So I let's be fair with that as well. I think that there wasn't enough money and efforts put into those markets, and obviously not having the team there all week, they never really, I think, truly felt like it was their team, and that's kind of that kind of took that toll. I don't think it's really the product on the field, because I think they did get competitive, and I know the people that I was around enjoyed the game. So that's my take.
There was one here about the advertising with the season. And said Jersey King lives in Las Vegas, and the local news never really talked about the Vipers and that hurt attendance, and then they need to renovate Cashman badly. What I will say to that is, from what was given, they were able to make it work. Now, considering in a venue that was under 10,000, they were able to put in about 66, 2/3 of that into the stadium, which is, in my opinion, that's actually quite impressive from having little to no marketing, because you could have had a whole lot less and a whole lot more issues. And what was thrown together was, you had to make something stick. And I think in this go around, as we go into the future, that will be different. And I see Ball Hawk is liking some of your comments. Good Doctor saying, listening to ESPN Radio Sunday, and they were basically laughing about the XFL that has to change for the league to be successful and repeated. And I think the reason why is because of, the face with the league. But the main thing here is the season got across. That's what I think that the league execs were really trying to do, was making sure that all 43 games were played and that season was able to be done. Now that the season is done, now you can grow from that and see what to do from going into season number 2. Said the Apollos averaged 19,000, same time of the year. Marketing wouldn't have helped Vegas. What's going on, Robert? And there was a huge reliance on organic fan engagement to make up for the lack of marketing. That's a fact. And then hopefully throwing some more money into it and combining those efforts will help next season. Let's see. They made it work and improved it during the season. I feel they need to move the light soccer team to Sam Boyd and fully renovate Cashman. And our plans about to be away games next year, support the league. Advertising was now great in San Antonio. Okay, interesting enough. Everybody chiming in on the show today. Thank you so much for some of your comments and things like that. That's kind of what we do here on the XFL show. We want to make sure that the league does see what that can be done to be improved upon. One of the major things, though, Mike, is that is listening to fans. Do you remember? I know you do. You remember the Fan Advisory Network from 2020, right?
I do.
And you remember what they were looking for when it came to, and it was one of the main things from Vince's first ever press conference about the return of the XFL was giving back to fans, right? What is your thinking that we should do going into season 2? I know that they brought the huddle. The huddle's supposed to be similar to the Fan Advisory Network.
It's not the same. I mean, they're trying. It's not that they made no effort with the huddle, so it is an effort. It just doesn't seem like it's as active. It's something that's there. It's kind of like checked off that box a little bit. I really hope that Russ Brandon and the entire team kind of goes back and revisits that and makes it much more active. And I understand probably the most important thing was getting football back, right? And focusing on those particular things and partnerships, because the money's got to be there to make sure that season did get finished. So I understand where they were. But with season 2, let's get back to the fans. And I know we talk about all these shows that have, for whatever reason, not been given certain access and being looked at a certain light, and I'm not trying to stand on my soapbox and beat my chest saying me. I'm saying everybody, because I think we missed out on what actually went so well, and it was that fan focus. And if we're going to make the next leap to where we should get back to where we were at 2020, or how some people are pointing at with the Apollos in 2019 with the AAF, those efforts need to be doubled down on. And I think that the somewhat hub took away part of that fan engagement as well. And I know a lot of people are trying to do their own fan fest. I know we try to do it in Orlando, but it's a little bit harder when you don't have things being put out there by the team. And a lot of the meet and greets in Orlando, I'll say this as well, they weren't at the right times of the day. Now, I'm a season ticket holder that lives in southern Sarasota County. So for those that don't know, I'm 2.5 to 3 hours away from Orlando based on how traffic's going to go on I-4. And if anyone's ever traveled I-4 knows it is a mess. It is a parking lot most of the time at any decent hour of the day. So to travel, it's a lot of back roads. If you're going to make it, sometimes it could be 4 hours, right? It could go anywhere from 2.5 to 4 hours. Well, if you're going to do a meet the team event at 5 p.m. in Orlando on the Friday before the game, one, it's a work day. 5 p.m. is terrible because most people are probably getting out of work at 5, on that 9 to 5 schedule. That's supposed to be the most coveted, the most worked shift across the country.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one, they're probably still working. 2, if they did get out a little early, now they're stuck in that crazy Orlando traffic. How does anybody attend those events?
I mean, you're so right about that, because even in Houston, a lot of the events that they decided to put out, because it just seemed like they just threw something up against the wall to see if it could stick. And that happened a lot during the season when it came down to these events. Like, hey, I need y'all to come on down to City Hall at 12 o'clock. Who is coming down on a work day to come down and celebrate with the Houston Roughnecks at 12? You're going to get maybe at best 50 people showing up for this type of event. That's not okay. Like, when it gets to getting to these things, you're gonna have to start working with you're gonna have to work with these cities. You're gonna have to work with getting relationships with venues and with city mayors if you need to do that. Because if you want to take this seriously, you got to start having these type of relationships. And what was crazy was, okay, the South Division Championship, they went and got Bun B. Somebody from the Roughnecks went and got rapper Bun B to say, hey, get down to the championship. That's great, because a lot of people in Houston love Bun B. I saw absolutely nothing in St. Louis. Why? Because they already knew St. Louis was going to come show up for those games organically. You already knew it. So they didn't. It's literally like saying this. They didn't even bother. Why bother? If I already know y'all coming down to these games, why bother? So they didn't even. I don't even think next season they'll do the same thing. It's like, hey, we saw 150,000 plus fans in 5 games come to these Battlehawks games. Why bother? So now, I guess in this case, we're working with the other 7 cities.
I have a question, and I'm not expecting you to answer. I'm just going to put it out there for everyone to kind of chew on here for a moment. If we recall in the lead up here to the 2023 season, Danny, Dwayne, The Rock Johnson, the talking point was always about the entire experience, right? In-game experience for the fan. So when I went to my first home game for Orlando, I was expecting something to be different. I didn't get different. I didn't see much of anything being different than I have already experienced at countless NFL games, countless college games. I was a season ticket holder for Syracuse Orangemen before I moved down to Florida when I lived in Syracuse. I mean, I've been to MetLife for the XFL in 2020. I mean, I've been to arena football games. I mean, I had an experience. What was supposed to be this new and exciting experience? I didn't see it in Orlando. And to be honest with you, I didn't really see it at the championship game that I was just in San Antonio. I feel like I watched a very similar product. I understand we have a different rules and stuff, but I thought we were going to get way more ties into sports betting and fantasy sports. It sounded like everything they were going to set the table for all these new things that are being incorporated that we're not seeing at the National Football League. And obviously you don't see it college football, but we didn't get it.
Remember 2020, that's what they focused on. They focused on the sports betting. They focused on the fantasy game. Remember the technology, right? So when they put out this XFL boxes game, you didn't have anybody come over and explain it. You just threw it on the website and say, hey, if you want to play, go ahead and play. And then you had the whole XFL fantasy game. You just threw it on the website and said, here, go out and play. Like, if you want casual fans to jump into your league, you're gonna have to explain some type of stuff. Oh yeah, I already knew that. We knew that one already. We knew that, because I would say for that was that when their leadership came on board, they came at the tail end. And when you're coming at, you rushing to get everything together. And I know 2020 was more, everything was tedious and everything was starting to line up because you didn't know what it was. You didn't know what the product was going to be. But when we got to 2023, they had the template. They had the template. So then all they had to do is kind of work within the template, and they did not. Or it was slow moving. And folks, I got Mike Lathrop here with Player 54. He's kind enough to join me here on the XFL Championship Hangover here on the X-Fan Show Tuesday. See, look, people like they stumbled upon it. They didn't even know it was there.
Well, I do want to be fair to the league for one thing that I did not mention. So to say that they didn't do anything new, I guess it would be wouldn't be incorrect, at least from an Orlando perspective. I can't tell you any of the other 7 stadiums, but they did kind of have a I don't know exactly what the term they use, but it kind of had a bunch of setups for vendors and pitcher opportunities and like little I say cardboard, but they're like board cutouts. You can get pitchers and a bunch of giveaways of Zoa, and things like that. So that was different than 2020 that I experienced at MetLife as a New York Guardian season ticket holder. So there was a difference. But if that's all you had was before kickoff, before you came in and essentially scanned to get into your seat, that didn't change the game experience. It might have just changed the pre-game experience. So I'll give them credit. They did something different there. But if it was anything else, I don't know how I missed it because I went to a lot of games.
Right. And, at the Roughnecks games themselves, what was experienced there, they did spin to win, that type of thing. And I'm like, okay, that's fine and whatnot. They did like the little races outside on the field, like they were allowing a couple of fans come down and race against one of the hosts, I guess, because she was a track and field star and things like that, which is fine. That's something different. You don't really expect that. But, I was expecting a bit more. However, and I was really hoping to see Houston really come out again like they did in 2020, but a lot of the holdups and a lot of people were just like, okay, I don't know about the XFL where I want to decide to come back after what they did back in 2020. It's like I will hold on to it. I won't go to any games. I want to see what happens first before I decide if I want to make an investment again. And I think a lot of people felt that way going into the year, especially cities that were, except St. Louis. St. Louis already was like, we're in no matter what. But other cities that were involved back in 2020 kind of felt like, I don't know. And I think that's what happened and why attendance wasn't the best. and the ratings were lower because of more TV options. Come on, man, let's just be honest. That there was a lot of curiosity back in 2020, but now in 2023, now that the curiosity again came, and you already knew what happened before, it wasn't going to be as big of an audience as we expect.
Well, I think the landscape in our worlds, meaning our individual worlds, have changed so much since 2020 that it's not fair to really compare 2020 to 2023. I don't like to use the pandemic as an excuse, but it has changed a lot of things for people. You know, we can look at New York State. So many people moved out of New York State and moved to Florida, for an example, that New York State lost a congressional seat. Okay, that Florida gained a congressional seat. Now, I'm not here to talk politics. That's not what this is about. What I'm trying to say is we have fundamental shifts in lives that people moved based off whether they felt they were refrained too much in their world or their states didn't take them serious enough and protect them enough, right? So I think now you have some people that didn't come out to games that might take their health a little bit more serious because they don't think the pandemic is truly over, right? So let's just, I'm going to hang my hat on this pandemic for, a little bit. I think there's an aspect here that people didn't make it out to games for that, or they moved away from some of their fan base where they were a season ticket holder or whatever, might buy a single game ticket. They're in a completely different area, so maybe they can't make it out the way they used to. I think the landscape has shifted so much. We see another league that's playing at the same time, a little bit later, but they're playing today, or not today, while the XFL season's over now, the USFL. The landscape continues to shift. And if you are now a fan of a USFL team, maybe you've lost your allegiance because the XFL is a twice failed league. This, talking point to some people. I think there's so much tied into it. Television and streaming, who doesn't have cable networks and who has only streaming? We don't know streaming numbers. So the reality is, do we have the same viewership? I'm not saying we do, but do we still have the same viewership in these games? I don't know. I mean, it's got to be more than what you just saw because there's somebody watching on streaming. I don't know to what extent that is. So how much have we lost? How much did we actually gain? How much of it is the same? The landscape has changed. Our lives have changed so much that I don't know what that answer actually is. And if I'm a bet man, I'm not even going to place a bet on what it is because it's almost impossible without actually having some more facts, some hard, true facts to actually support any of those lines of thinking. But I know it's not the same.
Yeah, it definitely is not. And I know a lot of people are mentioning on here, like scheduling. Scheduling hurt a lot of teams too. Having certain games on 11 in the morning or having it on a Thursday on a school night, because we got to remember it's still school night. Means like, well, they do that during the NFL season. That has been established. That's
appointment television by the NFL.
Yeah, that has been establishment. That's why it works with them. However, when it came to the XFL, that was more of an experiment for them because they wanted to see what can work on a different night. If they're saying that these are football nights, we want to see what we can try on those type of evenings themselves. And we had a Monday night game, we had a Thursday night game, we even had a Friday night game during the XFL season.
I also have a theory on this a little bit. Okay. If you want to hear it, it's up to you. I'm not trying to cut you off. I think having one broadcasting agreement lost the XFL a little bit of say in it. When you had the Disney and Fox back in 2020, they were both those networks or both of those parent companies were going to do things what worked best for both of them. So it means the schedule started to come a little bit more in line. As the league, you'd be like, okay, well, we'll shift maybe some of these games. But when Disney had full control, I can't imagine that the XFL wanted to be on FX. I can't imagine they had as much control as we think they'd want to have had. And maybe sometimes they were giving certain time slots that they probably didn't prefer. I agree that they were testing things. They got to know. But I also don't think that the XFL was in the driver's seat anymore when you signed an exclusive deal with Disney and all those parts, because you sign a 5-year means you're kind of stuck. That's your partner now. It's got to work for both.
I have to look at it like this. They looked at, you couldn't get ESPN slots because it was already priority to other sports. Already they had sporting events what they normally have already. ABC is going to have their slots as well when it comes to network. And it was like, well, we should have more network games. True. That should be the case. There should be more over-the-air network games for ESPN, but they were focused on the cable aspect and the streaming aspects in this case. So FX was, in their mind, perfect because it's a network that doesn't normally have sports. They have had sports on in the past. They've had sports on their network on in the past, and they chose that to be, all right, this is our XFL network. And what I mean by that, as in, because a lot of the games were on FX. So they wanted their cable outlet, because a lot of people have if you have cable, you have FX in your home. So just a lot of people was kind of wondering, all right, where the hell is FX? But FX has been around for years. Like you saw, they have great programming on their network, but they wanted to try something different. And so for the most part, it gave good ratings for their network, for FX's network. It may not look like that for us.
It might have been good for them, but it may not have been good for the league because there wasn't the right lead-ins and all that stuff as well. Right.
It may not look like that at all, but that was good for them. The same reason I can sit here and be like, hey, when back in 2020, when they had the games on FS2, they were their highest ratings, and you were trying to figure out where the hell is FS2 on my cable channels, and but the XFL was featured there. Now, what I was looking forward to when they had came out with this TV deal was a second broadcast network. I wanted them to do the same thing like they did previously, maybe a CBS or a TNT or, TBS getting involved with it, where they have a lot of broadcast households and they can utilize their programming there. But they were, like you said, it was just exclusive for ESPN. Now, whether it might hurt them, we really don't know. We just know what was seen this past year. And from the looks of things, we think it's not okay. The league thinks it's okay. They're going to go by what they feel is best. We think it's not okay. Having 500,000 people watch a game on a cable network that don't get seen much don't seem like a lot. But they see that as growth. They see that as growth.
I think it's not just growth. I think they see it as a 5-year exclusive deal. I think they have a partner that they know is long-term. When you're a startup, it's all about money. We heard Jerry Cardinal say over and over again in any of those summits he was at, anytime he had these interviews, the league must pay for itself. It must. This is not something we're going to float a bunch of money at. The league must pay for itself. So they needed that guarantee of money. And we can get into all the hairs of what that broadcasting agreement was, but more reports have come out that it's worth between $100 and $150 million. That it's not just, something that, there's a monetary value. It's not something that's figured out per game after production costs or a production deal, as people like to refer to it. This actually was different. All right. Do we have the 100% contract in front of us? Nobody has that, but we've seen it through The Athletic has had it reported and a bunch of other outlets as well. So it's a paid deal. They needed guaranteed money. They couldn't figure it out as they went along. They could not, because they had to know what their operating revenues, expenditures, they had to figure out what that balance sheet was going to look like. Jerry Cardinal made it known that that's how this league was going to operate. So for the league, this deal makes sense because they know what they're operating with. 100%. And I cannot fault them for that, because it's what guaranteed us through this year and why they're already looking at year 2.
Now, that's Ballhawk says, now that the product has proven itself, maybe the time slots will get better.
Hopefully.
Here's my thing to that. this is my thing to it, because it's partially on us to make that work. It comes at a fan standpoint, because you have to watch it, you have to buy the merch, and then you also attending the games. So TV, fan experiences at the games itself, and merchandise. Those are like one of the three key things. And of course, fan engagement when it comes to different things where you can play alongside. Like when I heard about the fantasy football, I heard from Amanda over at B-Hawk Live. She won her fantasy league. I want to know how many leagues were a part of this, because that's part of the fan engagement. But that also goes to the XFL at this rate. It's like, now you got a year under your belt. Now you got to make it really accessible. If you're saying this is a fan-oriented league, you need to find a way to get to the fan. Like, seriously. You got to get back to that fan advisory network back in 2020. I have to go back to that, because that was indicating how much they were investing into this league. That's how much they wanted the fans to see what the game was going to be like. Like, the game itself is fantastic. I can't sit here and be like, it's not okay. It's just mediocre. No, the game itself is fantastic. Case in point, what we saw in week 1 with the Battlehawks making the big comeback against the Brahmas.
Right.
That was the game.
Huge.
That was the game. And that is what that needs to kind of be built upon. That's what it needs to kind of be built upon. From
they have their foundation, Arlington. They have, in year 1, they took care of what they had to take care of, because if the league front office wasn't established with the people they brought in, I know everyone says it seems like they never operated a league before. That's ownership. But some of these people, whatever, had to start convincing ownership to be able to allow them to do X, Y, and Z, okay, without splitting hairs and getting into, what it is. I wasn't in all the conference rooms to have those discussions, but they had to figure that stuff. But they have their league front office team. They have team staffs. They have coaching staffs and players, and that will be, a little bit more fluid now, because opportunities go to the NFL and whatnot, and with contracts trying to bring people back that don't quite make it. How are they iron that out? But that foundation's here. What they can do now is they don't have to create all that foundation again. Now they can focus on these other areas that maybe they didn't want to spend too much money, because they, again, had to pay for it. It had to pay for itself. But now they know where they're at. They don't have to put as much money in head hunting and all this other stuff and whining and dining all these coaches and whatnot, trying to bring them in. Now that they're on board, as long as they don't get taken away. I mean, there's some talent there. Reggie had a heck of a season, and Coach Beck had a heck of a season. If somebody's looking for, somebody that's kind of now proved themselves on different levels, I don't think Wade's going anywhere. I don't think Hazlitt's going anywhere. So I think most of this is locked in. I don't think we have anything to worry about. It's now going to be those other areas.
Even Buckley, I know a lot of people's like, well, he's gone.
He's not going anywhere. They became competitive enough, and they, as a team, overcame that Dormady situation, right? The fact that the league reinstated him, he could have just rode the pine the rest of the way. They brought him in, and they acknowledged where they went wrong, and they give him the keys to the offense. That is a head coach that, whether we want to say swallowed some pride, did some self-reflection, whatever these terms you want to use, he realized what needed to happen, and he did it regardless of what. He didn't double down on what he did previously. So that's the type of guy you want, because that's growth. It's somebody that's willing to take the next step in their own development. So Buckley, I would have told you earlier, yeah, it's time to separate with him, at the end of the season. But I'll tell you now, it'd be foolish to, because obviously those guys were a very different team. And the fact that Dormady, and he made changes with the play calling, with handing over to Shane Matthews, I think that's the type of guy you want, that's going to make the changes and identify, hey, I'm wrong when I'm wrong, but I'll be right when I'm right. And when I get it right, now we're just got a couple things we got to tweak. And I think that's all they need to do to become a more competitive team. They're already competitive at the end, but a more competitive team where they might be able to contend for an actual playoff spot.
I mean, they're believing it or not, I didn't realize, Mike, there's so much to dissect from this season. Like, I didn't even really realize what we have in store and how much we've talked about in just less than an hour's time on this show. Because we could talk about Dean Blandino, we could talk about the refs themselves, we could talk about broadcast, the broadcast announcers and things like that. We got so much. I didn't realize that. I'm thinking, man, this is going to be just kind of move, but it's so much for the fans that they want to see and they want to hear. And a lot of times, you know, that's why we use this platform to discuss what we would love to see in these settings. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And we try our best to bring on different people of all walks of life from the XFL come on and talk about experiences and things like that. But that's why we have the X Fan Show, because it's for the fans. It's by the fans. We want their voices to be heard when they don't feel like that they're getting heard. You know, so that's why we put this on for them. That's why we had the events in San Antonio. You know, so that's the realm of things. And hopefully in the future that the league sees what we would love to do and have. Like, you got to bring back that advisory network. The huddle's got to change. It has to be something totally different, and you have to take it seriously at this point in the game. And because there are people that even from 2020 are still invested in this league, and they want to see this thing happen and want to make it work. So,
well, they have staff, you know, and I'll just throw, I know you're trying to wrap it up at the 1 hour, you know, we all got the rest of our lives to get back to, right? Yeah. But they have staff now in place, and, you know, they're very personable, at least the staff from Orlando that I have gotten to know, you know, in the short time. Heck, we even saw some of them in San Antonio. They have no problem speaking with the fans. I just hope the league will allow them to do some forums and do it in person. And if they record it and let ownership and the brass at the league office to listen to it, the huddle, yeah, let's tweak it. But if they can maybe do some meet and greets, not necessarily with players and coaches, but let's do some honest discussion and forums and let people kind of stand up with a mic and share things and, you know, kind of town hall, if you will, and just listen, don't dictate it so much, and then take that, because you have the whole off season, which in this case is a long one, and they could do a lot of good things if they just listened. But they got to either tune into a show like this, or they're going to have to do that work themselves, one way or the other. They're going to have to, you know, open up their minds and listen.
I got to give shout outs to Corey Helvey that I met in San Antonio. Did as good a job as he could to make that thing work in Orlando, man. And he's going to continue doing that going into 2024. Also, John Navarez with San Antonio, and the amazing job he did with getting that together and trying to get the trust back from what happened back in 2019 when it came with the San Antonio Commanders. Also, I think my man Mike in St. Louis, Travis in Houston, thank you so much for what you were able to do to make things work in your respective cities, but even in all of the other cities as well. You know, you did a great job to do what you could do at that moment. So, but those are the guys that I, you know, got a chance to meet personally. And Jason Ganella, shout out to Jason Ganella for getting this thing together, man. Like, seriously, it's been an amazing ride, and I can't wait to see what comes up in the future for this league, because, like I said, it has nothing but growth from here at this rate in the game, and the Legion is going to continue growing as the days get closer to the 2024 season, man. So, hey, Mike, thank you so much, man, for hopping on at short notice.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Coming and doing this for me, man. And it's fantastic. I know Dirty is still getting over the hangover from San Antonio, man. But thank you for dropping in and coming and do this with me.
Anytime.
All right, folks. Hey, we're going to wrap this bad boy up for this edition of the X Fan Show on Tuesday. Don't forget, folks, Horns Forward Monday and Fridays with the X Fan Legion Network, the Smoking Guns on Mondays. Also, of course, you got us every Tuesday and Thursday, but there is some we got an announcement for you guys on Thursday, so make sure you tune in for that. Ooh. Then, of course, the Rough 'Em Up podcast with Cullen Watkins. Make sure you go to his channel on YouTube to catch that. Don't forget the Player 54 podcast with Mike Lathrop, right? Standing guard as well. If you want to talk to anything about the Orlando Guardians, that's the gentleman right there. All right. Thank you so much again, Mike, for coming through and doing this for me.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. And thanks B-Hog Live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And thank you, Amanda, Daddy Ed, of course, the man Dirty himself. You guys do an amazing job with that show, and I couldn't be more prouder for all of you and the job that you can continue doing. All right. That'll wrap things up for this edition of the X-Fan Show Tuesday. Make sure you join us on Thursday, same time, 11 o'clock Central Standard Time, for another edition of the show. All right. Thank you. We out of here.